We're winging it today. Yeah, I turned it
That's
on.
cat for one.
Hey, Kat, can I have an agenda,
Sure.
please? Printed everything else off.
Pass that down.
I got my glasses just in case there's something to read.
Are we ready? Guys,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Now we're getting forward.
Okay. It's after 6 o'clock. I will call this Area Plan Commission meeting to order. The first item of business would be to restructure our positions. So,
I would nominate Jordan Brewer as president of the Area Plan Commission.
I'd second.
okay.
That's Clark.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. I'll continue on for another year. I appreciate the support. Okay. Next up would be vice president. Do we have any nominations?
Who wants to do it?
Well, I'll nominate.
Who was?
Dan was, so I will nominate Dan
I'll also
Sheets.
yield to any of our new members. But
Well, Grant,
I'll
are
be happy
you
to
in
do
the
it.
mood to step up?
It doubles your pay.
Really? Hey, I need
Zero
that.
times 0 is still 0.
I mean, I can if Dan doesn't want to.
I would nominate Grant. Let's get some of this young blood.
I'll
busy.
second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you,
Motion
Grant.
carries
No problem.
6-0. Welcome.
Thank you.
And,
Need a secretary.
and we need a secretary. So Clark had been the secretary. I will make a motion for Clark to continue on as secretary.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed?
I abstained.
Okay.
Good, I don't have to change my paper.
All right. I think that's all of the restructuring. So we will move forward with the roll call of members, please.
All right, Jordan Brewer,
Here.
Dan Sheets,
Here.
Clark Beard,
Here.
Walt Minnick.
Here.
Andy Bailey.
Here.
Good. And I'm missing someone, Grant.
Here.
And,
Wishes he wasn't.
I didn't say that, Jordan. I didn't say that, Jordan.
I said 6 days.
I did not say that.
Now you gotta show up.
Hey, I do show up.
Staff with Stitzel and Cat Beller present, as is Attorney Jay Moore.
Okay, next up is the disposition of the minutes. We've all had a chance to review it. Are there any corrections or changes?
Oh, I make a motion to approve the November 1st minutes. I did look at them a while ago, and they looked okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 6-0 on the minutes. We have no old business, correct?
No old business.
Okay, so we will move on to the public hearings. The first item is we need to make a motion to accept a waiver for the filing deadline of 19 days for the first application. Do I have that motion?
I would move we waive the filing deadline.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, first application,
Secretary should sit down here from now on.
should, right? First application is CC 2022-01225, which is the petition of the William Knapp Trust. If you could take us through that, please, Liz.
Yes, this is a request for primary approval of a 2-lot minor subdivision called Knapp Crossing. Both the applicant's land and all the surrounding land is zoned agriculturally. The petition site is a 2.7 acre roughly parent tract that will be split into 2 areas. One area will be 1.7 roughly acres for the existing dwelling, and then there'll be an additional 1 acre where the petitioners would like to build a second non-farm dwelling. The site for the new house is on the north side of West County Road 600 North. It's between 300 West and State Road 39 in Section 6 of Ross Township. There's a little less than 1 acre that's currently part of the existing dwelling, and that's being combined with some of the surrounding farm ground to compensate for the creation of the proposed new 1 acre lot. So there's kind of a drawing there. You can see the existing house there in the middle, and then what's kind of happening is everything's shifting a bit, and some of what was yard area is going back into farm ground, and then they're taking a little bit of farm ground onto the other side for the new house. So there's some pictures on the second page, just kind of showing you what that area looks like from 600 North. We did do a point system on the new house, and it was approved by point system with 13 points, and there's a layout there of how those were divided up, if you're curious to read through those. And then this site is within the Napcoiner?
Yes, Quinn.
All right, thank you, Dan. Watershed, and there's 4 soil types on it. Those are split out also on the staff report if you're curious to see how they divide. The petitioner is requesting primary plat approval for Knapp Crossing. The standard rural development protection language is included within the covenants. The surveyor's office did state the drainage board approved the request, but they believe there might be a discrepancy in the location of a pipeline that was shown on the plat as it was submitted. Ron Wary, the surveyor, was going to look into that further, and just since I'm here at this point, he did give us an updated plat removing that pipeline, as he's determined it isn't actually in that location. So that modification's been made, and if any of you want to see that, I can certainly pass this down. The health department has approved the property as suitable for a septic system. It will require a perimeter drainage outlet. It's noted on the plat that the drain easement can be provided for lot 2 to the existing creek. But at least as of, I'm trying to look at this draft we got handed, but as of when I'd seen the draft, there still was no easement there, which is required. And then the enforcement clause for the covenants is included, and it can be initiated by any adjacent landowner within 1320 foot. Subdivisions have to meet the standards of the ordinance in order to be approved, and applications should not be approved if they do not meet the standards. So as we went through, one item I noted and we put in here was the language for exempt divisions, and that is relevant to this particular case because we have this leftover piece of the parcel that's rolling back in with the farm field, and it is properly labeled as an exempt division on the plat. So it does meet that, but the board does need to verify that it will receive a meets and bounds description as the ordinance requires for an exempt division. And an exempt division just means it's a division of land that's not being utilized in such a way as to be required to have a lot number to be buildable. In this case, farm ground, so it's exempt. 2 restrictive covenants that are properly prepared and legally sound. Jay was reviewing those, and when I get done with the staff report, if he's finished that, he'll let him have a moment to make any comments that he may have. But certainly the covenants need to be to his satisfaction. In terms of subdivision name, Kat did check with the county reporter. There's no other subdivision named Knapp Crossing, so the standard appears to be met. In terms of utilities, each lot does have room for a septic, but as of the time that we were at the staff report, the plat did not meet the standards of the health department because there's no easement for perimeter drains to a permitted outlet, nor is there an on-site outlet designated. The new lot does require a perimeter drain, so it must outlet somewhere with enough fall, and if off-site, an easement must be created for it. And I would note that typically we would not allow filing without that shown on the plat, but this was filed right across kind of that period of holidays, in late November, and I was not in the office when it was filed, and so it kind of made it through and was filed, and then we caught it, so we made a note there that that was an issue. And then related to that, under easements, again, a drainage easement is required for off-site outlet, and they're intending to outlet into the ditch on the other side of the road, so the step is not on either of these lots. So the recommendation of staff, and I'm just gonna take a moment and look, no easement has been added. It still says it can be provided, so this recommendation would stand. Per UDO 701.6A, 7, 8, and 9, the APC may only approve a plat that meets the standards of the Unified Development Ordinance. A condition is not supposed to be something that is a basic requirement to meet the minimum standards, as stated in 9 of the ordinance, where it states what conditions can relate to. This plat does not meet the standards of UDO 70306A3 and 703.18 due to a lack of a drainage easement to the location they plan to use for the perimeter drain outlet or other on-site secured perimeter drain outlet that's been excavated and elevation verified for the health department. So there's a lack of a plan that complies with the health department requirement of having a legal outlet to allow perimeter drainage. As there is still no easement created on the plat, it's shown that'll appear when it's done, and we don't have a separate easement in hand that's been created. Staff would recommend either continuing or denying. I did check, this land is all in common ownership, it appears, or at least family, so I don't see a reason they can't get the drainage easement drawn onto the plat and created along with the plat. So I would probably lean toward advising continuing. I don't see a reason that it can't be done. Also, staff would feel that the easement should serve both lots being created, not just lot 2, because they may not always be in common ownership with the farm ground, and there is a road in between where the outlet is. So if lot 1 has an issue with their drain, they will still have the right to run a replacement. If there's already a drain for lot 1 and they're not sharing, then there probably should be 2 easements created, one for each lot, that duplicates what reality is. And then once that easement is addressed, then otherwise, staff would recommend granting primary approval. There's just that issue with it not meeting the ordinance requirement for filing an approval. So, and there is a note here that there are some conditions that staff would recommend. The restrictive covenants in their final form meeting Jay's satisfaction. The exempt division being recombined with the surrounding field to be farmed and receiving a meets and bounds description. And we've already taken care of this, but that the pipeline is shown in the correct location, so that one probably could drop off.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one question. So I live, or our house, I still live at home, is about half-mile away from where this is taking place. Are they going to drain into that creek across the road? Is that what you said?
The plat shows that there's an existing creek, 185
Yes.
foot south of the road, and they've got an elevation at that creek. Does appear to give them enough
Okay.
flow. And so, yes, their intent would be to presumably bore under the road or dig across,
Okay.
but they're somehow crossing the road and outletting into the creek. There's just no easements.
Yeah.
With being drawn on the plat and with legal descriptions in the covenants to be created when this is recorded.
Okay.
So,
Jay, have you finished and have anything to add, or do you need more time?
No, I think I'm finished. They've added easement language, but it doesn't but there's no
identify.
easement shown on to match up with it. And I would recommend that when he redoes that, the easement language should reference the easement as shown on the plat. Something I noticed, and this is maybe this applies to both plats we have in front of us today, or covenants we have before the subdivision state. Both of these reference in paragraph 1 that the ground for these lots has been used as agriculture in nature. These new lots shall be used for residential purposes and not intended for commercial business. And the problem I have with that is saying it's not intended for commercial business is not the same as saying
It's not.
it is prohibited.
Yeah.
And you're really,
it should be one or the other.
yeah, you're just setting up an ambiguity that is asking for a problem.
Unnecessary.
And I would note, if we read that language in a covenant, we probably wouldn't even allow a home occupation unless it specifically says they're allowed, because that is a commercial entity. So they probably need to decide if they want all commercial banned, or if they don't, and then clean it up to specifically state what is or isn't allowed instead of what might
Well,
or might
here's
not
the
be
other
intended.
question, the other thing is you could also get in a fight over the fact that it's zoned agricultural, and somebody
Farmer.
is using they're selling corn or whatever,
Seed sales is commercial even though it's agribusiness.
Yeah.
And it is permitted in
Agribusiness
the
is
ag
commercial,
district.
in my opinion.
So,
So,
the state draws a line between like a tool shed that houses farm equipment for farming the soil versus a seed dealer who is agriculturally related but is not given the same exemptions as a farmer would be.
So anyway, I think that's an area that should be addressed and tightened up.
What would be better? Just to strike those words
I
and
think
not?
that's preference for the developer, honestly, if they, the ag district allows, some commercial uses by special exception. Like home occupations and seed dealers come to mind immediately, contractors' businesses, which we do see come in. So I think if the developer's intent is to say, no, we're gonna live in one of these houses, or whoever lives here, we don't want anything commercial, that's valid. On the other hand, if they want to let zoning handle it and they don't have a preference, that's valid too. Or they could say, no commercial activities permitted except home occupations, and we see that sometimes in covenants. I don't think there's a better or a worse. You can't write something in covenants that permits it through zoning without an approval, but if the covenants ban it, then staff, if somebody files, is gonna write a staff report that says, this isn't allowed by covenants, we recommend denial, to our boards, because why would you approve a use that the covenants ban and set up a lawsuit? It doesn't make sense.
It needs clarity one way or the other.
Yes, because what you've done now is you've created an ambiguity, and quite frankly, you may create problems for the person, for the home occupation person,
Yeah.
and that.
So, okay.
The only other comment I had was on the reference to lot lines on, and again, on both of these, it is, on enforcement, since there's two lots, it should either be the boundaries of the lots in the subdivision or within 132 feet of the boundary of a lot in the subdivision instead of, so you need to make it clear that it applies to both lots.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, at this time, I'll still open it up for the petitioner if they would like to come to the podium or someone on the petitioner's behalf to, I guess, further comment or direction. I think you've heard the planning side of it, so we'll take your side under consideration as well.
Sure. Okay, Ron Wary of Moses Surveying, representing the petitioners. The legal description for the exempt division has been created. I got a letter today from the potential buyer, says that the septic installer has not decided yet where to put that drain yet to create that easement. But because it's a family member, Mr. Napa told me that it can easily be created. His tile is already across that road down to the creek already for his, so he has a prescriptive easement, at least for that. But I can locate where that tile is and put it in as an easement across this also, so that could be at least reference to that. And I was given a map that shows where the actual pipeline was, so that's why I erased it off of the original drawing. Had a survey back in '81 that showed that pipeline going across this lot. And then I saw another one in '89 that says it was not constructed there, but I didn't quite read it quite right and didn't see that it was not constructed there. So that's why I changed it for there. And so other than that, I'll be glad to, especially with Jay's comments, those are kind of minor to be able to do. The statement about residential commercial has always been in covenant, so we can easily get that erased and take it out, because that's what the intent was, is be just residential anyway.
Okay. Any questions from the board or board discussion at this point?
I would just say the outlet for that, if they do create a new one and do cut the road, they'll need a permit from the highway department for that and to connect to that drain. That is a legal drain, so they'll need to get a permit from the surveyor's office and drainage board to connect to that drain.
Any other thoughts from the board members? I would personally be open to continuing it with the changes that have been spoken of today and give another opportunity to get these corrected to meet the standards and move forward, so I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts.
I would agree.
I would agree.
Is that a motion?
I will.
It sounded like 4 motions.
I will allow someone else to make that motion.
I move to continue, so that the petitioner has time to address the issue with the, easement.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll do roll call, Liz, please.
Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Ken Sheets,
Yes.
Mark Beard,
Yes.
Walt Mack,
Yeah.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
and Grant Muller.
Yes.
So we will continue that to our February 7th meeting, and if everything can be met, I think it'll have a chance to move forward, so. Next up, we have a similar situation as the first one. We need to have a motion to waive the filing deadline of 19 days.
I would move we waive the filing deadline of 19 days.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Second.
Aye. Grant was second. Okay. Now, this is application CC 2022-01226, the petition of Susan Northrup. Can you take us through that, please, Liz?
Yes, this is another request for primary approval for a 2-lot minor subdivision called Kilmore Creek Retreat. Again, both the petition site and all of surrounding ground are zoned agriculturally. The site consists of 12.2 acres and is a parent tract that will be split into 2 areas, roughly 6 acres for the existing dwelling, just a hair over 6, and then 5 3/4 acres where the petitioner would like to build a second non-farm dwelling. The site for the new house is located on the east side of North Hamilton Road. It's between 300 North and State Road 38 in section 23 of Madison Township. It's staff's understanding that the new dwelling will be for the petitioner's son and his family to reside upon, although I would certainly note that once created, there's in no way connected, it doesn't have to remain that way, it could be sold, not an issue. There is floodplain around the outer perimeter of the property, but there's still plenty of room outside that floodplain to build a second dwelling. There in the second page is a picture that kind of shows that extensive floodplain, and, it kind of goes around the edge of that. And then there's a picture from Hamilton Road looking up, and you can actually see down there at Hamilton Road, you're in the floodplain, you can see how much, the elevation kind of climbs as you go up onto the, I guess for lack of a better word, the plateau, above that floodplain. So the petitioner obtained Board of Zoning Appeals special exception approval for a home site on August 23rd, 2022. That was docket 4920 SE. This new home site is not within a legal watershed, but it does have approval from the Drainage Board. The new home site has 3 soil types, and they're kind of listed there, if you're curious about that. So again, they're requesting primary plat approval for Kilmore Creek Retreat, a 2-lot minor. The standard rural development protection language is included within the covenants. The surveyor's office has stated the Drainage Board approved the request. The health department has approved the property is suitable for a septic system, and it will require a perimeter drainage outlet, which is shown on site on the proposed plat for the new lot. Something that staff felt the board might discuss, and this is different from the last one because it's the existing house that this comment relates to, not the new lot that's being created. But because of the way in which the second lot will be created, the first lot in the original house will no longer have access directly to the creek. And if this were to be sold and no longer be in the family, or there were to be some kind of altercation between family members and the septic failed on the first lot, and it also were to require a perimeter drain, which is likely in Clinton County, they might not be able to get the drainage outlet in across that lot. And part of platting a subdivision is trying to foresee needs in infrastructure for the area and make sure they're taken care of at platting so they don't come back to haunt people. So that is a 1978 septic on the original house, which means it is already way past expected lifespan for a septic system. It's not in failure in any way that I'm aware of, so there's no emergency of any kind. But staff would recommend at least some conversation about if an easement should be created across the new lot, so that when or if there's an issue with that septic on the original lot, they do have a means of getting to the outlet. But that's just a point of discussion. not a flat requirement because of how it sits. So, finally, the enforcement clause in the covenants is included, and it can be initiated by any adjacent landowner within 20 foot. So in terms of principles and standards of design, the restrictive covenants, being properly prepared and legally sound, Jay was reviewing those, and I'll pass to him at the end of the staff report. He already mentioned one of his comments. Then subdivision name, Cat checked with the county recorder, and there's no other subdivision named Kilmore Creek Retreat. So consequently, staff would recommend to grant primary approval of the minor subdivision with the condition that the restrictive covenants meet Jay Moore's satisfaction, and if there's a desire to have an easement added for that second lot, you could also add that as a condition, since it's something that, honestly, we see feuds start over these kinds of things, 30 and 40 years later, so it's just something to discuss. If you decide you don't care about that, then, you don't need to mention it. And I think that's everything that we have from staff's perspective.
Okay. Jay?
Yeah, same comments, it was exactly the same.
Same as the previous?
Yeah.
So some changes to the covenants need
Yeah,
to be
same,
made?
same
Okay.
changes, same
Okay.
issues.
Okay, all right. Petitioner or representative of the petitioner?
In Ron Wary of Moses Surveying. The request of the staff comments, I put the easement across the front of lot number 2 for lot number 1. The existing septic system for lot number 1 is there. I did not discuss this with them to know if there's actually a tile already going across them, go to the creek. But an area is reserved in front just in case they do need to do that.
So you're
And-
confirming there is an easement across to the creek in the
Yes.
front of the property?
And that should be shown on the plat.
Okay.
It's on the plat now.
Is it?
Yes?
Looking, do you see an existing easement on the front of the plat for change? Oh. Okay, I see a note that there is an easement, but.
It will be
is the entire
created.
50 foot or a portion of the 50 foot?
All of it.
Jay will have to look at that.
It says drainage easement in 50-foot setback for lot number 1.
Correct.
Where?
So,
I don't know if there's already an existing one because of the existing septic system.
And if the easement
But it
is
can
a
be there.
50-foot setback for lot number 1, it's not gonna do any good to cross lot number 2. But the arrow points to lot number 2, even
I
though
think what he
language
means
says-
is
To the benefit of lot number 1.
Yeah,
But it doesn't say where the drainage easement is within that 50 foot.
well,
So
if you say it's in
Then
the
it's
50
just
foot,
anywhere in
in
the
the
50.
50 foot is
Okay.
sufficient. Yeah. Here shows the 50-foot front setback here, well, it shows a 50-foot front setback here too, it looks like, but then
And
it doesn't,
it meets the floodplain, which then becomes the edge of the building envelope going this way, but the creek isn't until you get over here. The creek's on the lot line. But you can't build into the floodplain, so that's why their build line,
okay.
meets and turns this way.
So is it clearly stated or unclearly stated?
Well, he's looking at that, are both of these lots gonna share a driveway, or are they gonna have two separate ones?
We're here representing the Herald Vice.
Oh, so you don't know.
There
Right. Are they gonna,
They're planned to have 2 driveways.
okay, then that addresses that question.
With that question though, how can they have 2 driveways?
They have road frontage at the very southern edge, so they would have to put it in where they.
Westerly
So
edge,
they're gonna share a driveway, partial driveway.
while they're building.
Yeah, and then afterwards,
Then when it gets done, there'll be a new driveway up there.
At the existing driveway.
through plot 1, where the existing houses are.
That's what they're using now during construction, but when they'll put a new one on lot number 2.
Their very southern edge.
have to go
that
over
goes to-
Okay.
It's here, correct?
This is the existing house, this is the new lot. So
Oh,
they have to
that's
come out right
Hey,
here,
thank you.
between themselves and the creek and the existing pasture.
That's a high climb. So I'm not quite sure, I mean, that's gonna put road in there, put a road, that's a high climb. That road, I mean, they're on a hill. As she said, they're on a plateau also. You've got Kilmore Creek on one side coming all the way down. They'll be putting that,
we kinda got out of order, and that's completely my
I'm-
fault,
Yeah,
because I thought you
yeah.
were the petitioner,
No,
so
I'm
we.
sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'll give you guys an opportunity here in a minute, so.
So I just realized we don't have your name, and so we're gonna get our minutes all confused. I'll own that, though, I just jumped to a conclusion. I guess my comment on that would be, if there's any chance they're gonna end up sharing a driveway, there's nothing about shared maintenance or driveway easement currently in this. So if there is, or maybe an elevation issue that causes a shared driveway, that's something that might need to be considered. I don't know that we have enough information. If they can
What-
get it over that grade and they're gonna knock that out and engineer it to work.
What about the county highways having a say so?
They already have.
County Highway said they didn't have a problem with,
Okay.
the curb cuts, into the county road in those locations. Now, they're not gonna look at what's required to get across the terrain between the houses.
Oh, I didn't realize
It's
that.
just off the, it's just off
That's the starting
off
point.
of the
Exactly.
county road is all that is, they're taking care of, so, okay. So I'll back up, cause I'm still personally unclear. Are we clear on the easement?
I'm not.
There is no driveway easement because there doesn't
Not,
need.
not the driveway,
We're talking
the
about the
drainage.
Oh,
that
okay.
Jay
So
was
start
looking at,
there and then
whether
we'll,
it's clearly indicated in the plat and covenants as to its,
The-
location and route.
I feel like it's not, since it's taking
Well,
more time
you know,
to
if
address.
the 50-foot front setback was extended all the way to Kilmore Creek, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but it's not.
But
It
it's
stops at
not.
the floodplain.
Because it stops when you show where it intersects the.
And in fairness, that's how it should be drawn, because that's the building envelope, right? So
Yeah.
Ron didn't draw it incorrectly.
But if
It's
you,
just-
on the other hand, you could easily state it as 50 feet in uniform width measured from the, whatever,
Boundary.
from that boundary line, from the front
And
boundary
then you
line.
would have a defined easement.
Then
all the way.
that would be sufficient.
Okay, so we
So
need some, we
but
need clarity on the
You would need to make
easements.
the change,
Yeah.
but it would be very minor.
Okay, minor change to the easement, so
And
there's,
make it clear that
It's to the benefit of lot.
that lot one, lot two, lot one is benefited by the easement on lot two. Rather than reads it, right now, that maybe it's just the 50-foot setback along lot one. That doesn't get you there.
It might be simpler. I mean, this is a discretionary thing for how Ron wants to do it, but it might be simpler to somehow indicate it and then put the language of the description and, what it's for.
I mean, if he said it's 50 feet in uniform width
along
across
the- that's absolutely a description, yeah.
lot one and lot two of that subdivision, I think that's sufficient. I mean, you can always go figure out where that is.
we could say that it needs cleaned up to Jay's
I
satisfaction.
think that's
Yeah.
the way to state it. yeah.
And
let
and I
Ron
think
and
it
Jay
won't
work
be
it out.
that hard to do.
Okay. Any other items,
I
Ron?
believe that answers all the questions.
Okay. So now I'll open it up to anyone else that would like to comment. Yeah, if you could go to the podium and state your name for us, please.
My name is Charles Tedrick. I am representing the Harold L. Weiss Trust,
Okay.
Family Trust. And the only question, I mean, as far as easement, that's, they want to go up a side of a mountain, I guess they can go up a side of a mountain. But wording, they're calling this the Kilmore Creek Retreat. And I spoke to somebody this morning, okay, was it you? And I'm concerned about a micro or a mini subdivision in a Kilmore Creek Retreat. Because what that tells me that there's, it's gonna be commercialized in the sense that they'll have retreats.
They have no Board of Zoning Appeals approval for anything other than single-family dwellings. Legally speaking, you can name a housing development, anything you can imagine under the sun. I mean, you could call it anything from something vulgar to something wonderful. It doesn't have to be a housing-related name. You could call it 7 Wild Horses, and
Right.
it would still be. So the name of it is in no way connected to the permitted use, and they have not gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals for approval of any use other than an additional house beyond the house that sits there. So they have approval for 2 homes total, the existing one and the new one. We've not heard any home occupations or anything else. A bed and breakfast would require a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeals, as would a retreat center. So both of those things would have a hearing and there'd be notice to neighbors if someone wanted to do that in that location in the future.
The other thing is a environmental impact on that area. And the reason why I say that is that just on the other side, west of Kilmore, or Hamilton, is the Herald. It's a land that's going to be turned into a conservation by a group eventually. We don't know when that's going to be, but it is written in the will and the family trust that way. But part of it is, it's the, the Indiana bat, the fish, the wildlife in the creek, and you're talking septic systems and all these kind of things. And of course, you've brought up the existing home, 1977, when that is in. I've never noticed any problem either, and I'm down there all the
Well,
time.
and perimeter drains only drain groundwater, they don't drain
Yeah.
sewage.
Okay.
The perimeter drain, the purpose of it is it's basically a loop that goes around the outside of the septic fingers. It does not connect to them in any way, shape, or form. And it's designed to pull the groundwater levels down. I'll just use my house for an example. My seasonal water levels come within 8 inches of the surface. My level for my actual tile that's draining my septic and
Right.
treating the water is below 8 inches. So therefore, it can't function if it's immersed. So the perimeter drain's function is to pull the water level down so that your finger system can continue to treat your waste properly without polluting or contaminating the environment. So what's
Theory.
leaving the perimeter drain
In theory.
is water.
Okay.
If you don't put a perimeter drain in, then yes, now you can have leaching into so that perimeter drain's important, but it's not connected to any kind of sewage.
Yeah, because I know that Harold Weiss did a lot of work on that creek, helping with the DNR and people like that to do test water, in those. And the organization that is going to take the land in conservation they were very interested in that area. I mean, when we mentioned it to it, they were there in a hurry, just to talk to us and the whole thing. And we don't want that to ever go, as long as we can preserve that ecosystem, we'd like to do that. So we just want to make sure that
An environmental
environmentally.
impact study was not done. That's not a requirement in the ordinance for a single home. So that wouldn't be standard in any way. Now, floodplain examination was done. They can't disturb the floodplain, which is that whole wooded area going on, down to the creek and up. And you can certainly see the plat where that cutoff is for where any construction can occur. And it's about halfway across their lot, where that drops off. But the health department did not raise any concerns about the design of the system. The surveyor and the drainage board did not raise any concerns about how that water, was being handled and potential. And I would say that's not typically something that a single residence on a large amount of acreage face a concern for. But certainly, the board may wish to discuss that. But one has not been done. It's not something our ordinance would give us the right to demand somebody to do, to be allowed to file and come through for conversation. Of course, in terms of bats, state law would govern there. You can't
Yeah.
cut down mature trees during certain seasons of the year, per DNR. But as long as you cut them outside those seasons or you don't disturb the trees at all, that's not an issue with
Yeah.
bats. We've dealt with that with other projects. And the state would enforce that if they were to start cutting bat habitat in the season when bats would be nesting.
Right. Okay, the only other thing is my thing is, how much room is there for another resident in that area? And the reason is because I know that Mrs. Northrup's daughter and her son-in-law, her husband, are, one day planning possibly, the split of this land is because of the children. And is there room for another house that would be located what you've got in lot number 2?
Well, right now, they'd have to go to a special exception for the PZA and then vacate and replat this, because you can't divide it. 1 acre is required for minimum lot size, so theoretically, if you have 100 acres, you could put 100 houses. However, I will note, without central sewage systems, that doesn't actually work out to be approvable by the health department. So unless somebody's putting a whole lot of money in, you can't exceed what your septic systems can handle. But I don't know that there's any way to make absolute guarantees for the next 300 years that
Right,
another house would never
Yeah.
go there. I will tell you that typically the ordinance doesn't, if someone's gonna build another house, we would typically encourage it where there are already homes, because that avoids chopping up more agricultural ground or, woodland that's untouched right now versus a new lot, but, I mean, I don't know, the board may have some comment on that, but I don't know any way to guarantee that they would never come through, other than to go to a future special exception meeting if they attempted it and raise your objections to that board at that level.
And the last question is we were just noticing on the plot that we received, in the northeast corner, it says a septic outlet,
I just noticed that.
and we aren't sure what that means.
That is odd, that's a Ron question.
goes out
Oh, that's gonna be for the new houses?
For the new
Perimeter
one?
drain? Okay, and then the
Okay.
easement on the front is for the original house, should they ever need to
Right.
replace their septic, we wouldn't have to condemn the house.
Okay, gosh, there's septic way out in the middle of nowhere there, guys. Okay,
Okay.
I think that's, thank you.
Yep.
Not to take too much of your time.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up for board discussion, thoughts. You guys have any thoughts? I will note for the record that Dan Sheets left, so we're,
Yep.
we have one member that is no longer present.
However, we do still have a quorum.
Yep.
Well, this is somewhat like the first one that we ended up continuing. Are there enough unknowns here and concerns from the neighbors that we need to step back here and continue this one till the details are actually finalized?
I guess my question would be what details, this is fundamentally different in terms of the easement because the existing, it's an existing house, not a new house where the conversation is, and it's, they have indicated the easement across the new lot, it's the language of it that's a question. You certainly could continue it, but you probably need to be specific about what you want to bring
Well, I
back.
hear questions from these folks, and then questions about this new driveway that, may or may not actually be
Do you want them to combine it into a single drive then, is that what you're saying? Because right now it's two drives, approved by county highway.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm indifferent on that. I
No.
don't know how much jurisdiction we have on what they do with the drive as soon as it enters their property. I mean, to me, that's on the homeowner to figure out how they get from point A to point B. County highway determines if they can have access from the county road. So,
I think it certainly might be appropriate to say that if they discover they can't get down that incline, then they need to include an appropriate easement to Jay's satisfaction for the,
yeah.
Well, then they'd have to amend their plat.
so maybe you just leave it as a. I don't have any issue with continuing, I just think you need to clearly state what you want Ron to bring back, 'cause I think in the question and answer in the conversation, it's not clear to me what Ron needs to bring back, so I'm guessing.
Well, I'm a little fuzzy about everything.
Well,
So
I
it'd
mean,
be the-
you've got two questions here, and both of them, one being the drive, and that's, obviously the highway department said that it's feasible on their end, so that's, in my opinion, a non-issue, unless the petitioner wanted to come back and build an easement in the plat for the subdivision, that they had an easement through the original lot. And then the other one is the septic, and we've already got an established septic in the one lot, so really we could approve it. The only loose ends that we have is when the septic does ever fail and they need a perimeter drain, is that plat gonna give them the easement that they need or not? I mean, that's the biggest question in my mind.
And
I think we could approve it today and not worry about it. It'd be a little bit
Well,
of passing the buck.
No, I think
At
if
the
you
end of the
approve it,
day.
you need to make it subject to the language defining
Finding.
the easement being cleaned up to Jay's satisfaction. Because
Okay.
Jay believes the easement is indicated on there, it does, it's
not.
there, it's just not as
And
clear as it should
And
be.
it's not, it really doesn't show how it extends to Kilmore Creek.
So I don't think you wanna pass on the easement completely, I think you
Yeah.
do wanna make it a condition that when that secondary comes through, it's right.
Yeah, I think he needs to if the intention is that it's a 50-foot easement along the entire west side of Lot 2, then it's really that simple. But he needs to show that 50-foot easement along
And this one's different
for
because
the benefit of Lot 1.
the new lot that is creating the new house has an on-site outlet, whereas the previous one, the new lot needed an off-site outlet. So the, when you look at the ordinance requirement, for the easement, there are some who would argue, and historically, we wouldn't even have looked at what the original house might need down the road. We'd have ignored it completely. But I guess, having been 16 years in this, the number of feuds that I've dealt with in my office where you go back and there was a point where you could have protected all parties, and, one of our boards just didn't think through it, or, we just weren't aware for any number of reasons. I mean, nobody's God, right? I'm sure there'll be things in 40 years someone looks at that I did, and they're like, why didn't you think of that, But I feel like if you can see it and foresee it, then you should try to account for it, because, courts have a much easier time resolving things if it's clear what's supposed to happen, it saves people a lot of time, effort, and angst.
One other thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't wear my hearing aids tonight, but I'm not that deaf. I thought I heard someone say they were gonna use the existing driveway for construction and then build the new one later. So why are we discussing this easement? Do they already have permission to use that driveway to construct this new house?
Well, it's currently all owned by the same family. I will say it's traditional not to put in a final driveway until construction's complete. We see that all the time because, those trucks that come in
I
and out
know,
for construction are super heavy. So, but what you would typically say is a temporary stone dropped over the drive, and then you put your final finish on once your house is done and your concrete in. But if there's gonna be concrete, there may or may not in this location, but certainly, that's the board's discretion. If you feel that an easement should be created so that it's there, because they're gonna use it for construction, that is within your right to require them to specify on the plat, and then they don't have to use the easement for their access down the road. I mean, I don't know, Jay, you may have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, but if you create especially on the drive easement, if you create that drive easement, then they can use that all the time. I mean,
Correct.
Yeah.
The
The-
homeowner to
that's-
that front is forced to have someone drive between the barns and the house forever if these properties sell.
exactly,
Because
and
you can't
that's,
prevent
and,
someone from using a
and
legal
these
easement, which
easement.
may be why they want two separate drives long term in
Exactly.
case. Because that drive
I
does
think
run.
that's not a good thing to do.
I will.
To create the easement?
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
that easement, I'm not.
I'm not proposing we do
Yeah.
anything, but I'm just a little unclear about it.
I guess where it would come in is if they started construction, and if lot one said, nope, you absolutely can't drive across my land to build that house. Well, then when they get in that dispute and go into court, somebody's gonna go, you don't have an easement, you're gonna have to put in your own construction entrance. On the other hand, if whoever's on lot one doesn't care, then, it's gonna work out. It's like me, any of us with our land, I can give anybody permission to go across my land without an easement until the point I decide otherwise, and then if they don't have an easement, they have to leave, so.
And the owner of lot 1 is basically the developer, right?
That he's the parents?
Mom.
It's the mother, the son.
The mom owns lot number 1.
Yeah.
The son, her son is Indianapolis and wants to come back home.
Gotcha.
So
And
if the mom is not willing to let them cross her lot to build the house, then they would be forced to put in a construction entrance. Without an easement, they would have no right to force her to allow them to use it.
I think.
I don't see it as being an actual issue.
No, I think we're getting off topic on that one. The real concern would be what happens if the drive is unconstructible for the second drive.
Well,
So then do they have to come back?
they would have to come back and amend the plat.
Okay.
But,
I don't know,
what we in Flatland, Indiana
Yeah,
think is
think is not.
unconstructible, and then you go to
West Virginia.
You go to Georgia and Tennessee and the mountains and you see what they build
Yeah.
roads,
It may be
driveways
more
on.
expensive, but there's usually ways
Yeah.
to get up inclines if you're willing to throw the money at stabilizing.
Yeah.
But-
So,
But there is a mechanism in place if
They
it's
have to
unable.
be-
yeah, they have to,
All right,
they have to
that's-
amend the plat.
That would be my only
Well, because here's the
concern.
thing, when they come in, you know, when they get into the permitting process, they've gotta have a drive permit, they, you know, they've gotta work through those kinds of things. So if before they get to their final CO, they can't get their driveway in, they're not gonna get a certificate of occupancy, and they're gonna have to come back and sort out the paperwork
Okay.
before they're allowed to move in or use the house, you know, which isn't an ideal situation, but I don't know that we have, I don't have any solid evidence in my office that indicates it is not possible to engineer and design a
Yeah.
way to get up the incline.
It's speculation.
Nor do I know if they don't have enough money to do it, so both of those things seem completely speculative.
Yeah.
It seems they believe they do have a way, so,
Yeah, to me, it meets the standards, assuming we make sure some of the covenants and the easements are on there. So I don't know if we have a motion one direction or another. We'll need 4 of the 5 votes to go whichever direction that may be, so.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve it as long as, with the conditions that the covenants are all satisfactory to our legal counsel.
And the
With the
easement.
easement, with the,
Yeah, with
with
that
the
easement.
septic easement,
The septic
Or
easement for
perimeter drainage.
lot 1 is
So,
clarified.
Across lot 2.
Yeah, across lot 2, yeah,
revised to Jay's satisfaction.
yeah.
Second.
we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Just a second.
Excuse me.
Mark, you were my motion, and I apologize, who was my second thing?
Andy.
Apparently I'm getting old. All right, Jordan Brewer,
Yes.
Dan Sheets is no longer with us, Clark Beer,
Yes,
Walt Minnick,
Yes.
Andy Bailey,
Yes.
and Grant Bowman.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any new business for discussion?
Yes, I have several items.
Okay. Are we on a time constraint?
BZA meeting is advertised for 7, but if anybody comes at 7, they can wait a moment, we can't start early, I don't think we're gonna take super long.
Okay.
First item is just informational in nature, and I sent an email to board members to let you know, but annually, state law says that the towns that participate in area plan meet, and they select their representative for the area plan commission. So Kat has actually gotten ahead of where we are most years and already gotten that coordinated and set. That's January 30th, am I correct? At 6 PM, that'll be in Rossville. It's required to be in the largest town by state law, and it'll be at 6 PM at the town park. So I tell you because often our board presidents and officers come and attend. It's a good time. A lot of times there's just an informal conversation between the towns. And it's nice to be able to interact and for them to see faces too. So if any of you are available, we'll go ahead and we notice it with 2 days' notice, so there's not an issue with, you know, you guys being present. And then usually Central Dispatch and sometimes Wildcat. I know sometimes we do some other appointments as well for other groups. I'll float that out in the county to make sure there's no one else that needs the towns to make a vote, just to save everyone else effort. So
Okay.
that's informational. Second item is also informational. Jordan is aware of this, and I believe Clark also is, but other board members may not be. The county commissioners and our new HR group have been working over the last year, just cleaning up job descriptions countywide. So by state law, the county commissioners do not adopt or assign job descriptions for area plan. The area plan commission does. However, we coordinate closely, and it's definitely in the county's best interest to have uniformity in terms of how things work, both legally and organizationally. I've reviewed some initial drafts and sent some comments back, so I don't have final forms in hand yet, but I'm expecting to have those. I don't know if you know, I would assume somewhat soon.
I would say by the middle or end of the month, the
Yeah,
latest.
so most of our duties are unchanged when we looked through them, they just pulled them off of our, we had more fairly recent job descriptions, because we've renewed them as we've done hires. But they've added a bunch of, kind of legalese, you know, at the bottom, general hiring language that hasn't been in county job descriptions historically, and cleaned up the headings a bit. So I don't see anything that's horribly substantial, but, what we need to do is, once we get those, I'll, get them scanned and distribute them to board members, and the plan commission will need to, either approve or reject them, and assuming that they're approved, then we'll need to provide the approved copies to the county commissioners and the auditor for their records, so that, you know, they're aware and we're collaborating. So, but I don't wanna blindside you guys with that. Whatever point we get those, I would sure think it'd be in the next month or so, at least from our standpoint, there weren't a ton of changes.
I would expect that, because the goal is to roll out the new handbook by the middle of March.
Okay.
So,
Do we know when there'll be a draft on that as a side?
I am working through, or we are working through chapters 1 through 4 right now.
Okay. Will there be
So-
an opportunity for department heads to be able to see any of that before adoption?
Honestly, probably not. We've allowed for the time period to input. At this point, it's
Okay.
kind of the
Which I sent pretty
HR
detailed
committee,
input, but-
yeah, will
Um,
review them, but I can probably share my version with you, so you can look at it.
I would appreciate that. Okay, so those are the information things, then I have one item that is gonna require action if you so choose. This is a 99 bottles of adult beverage on a wall scenario, if you each take one and pass it down. Okay, so while you're passing that down, this is, the new proposed fee schedule, which I emailed out a copy of, I think it's been a few weeks ago now. Just by way of reminder, in, the budget cycle for 2023, county council, as they worked through budgetary needs and what they wanted to do for employees in terms of, raises and dealing with cost of living, they asked that each department either cut expenses by 10% or increase fees by 10% to help offset, the effect on county general as they were working on those budgets. So we have a very small budget compared to many offices. We didn't have cutting that we could do and still pay our obligations. So we examined our fee schedule, and if you recall, it's probably been like 4 months ago, we did a fee comparison, the board requested us to do, because we don't do this very often, so the question that, the plan commission had for me was, maybe we need to make more than a 10% adjustment in some areas, because it's been a decade since we've even looked at our fee schedule comprehensively. So, there's 2 pages here. The back one is the fee schedule we have now, in case you wonder what something moved from and to. The front page is the proposed fee schedule. There's 2 different colors highlighted on it. The dark yellow, those are things that I increased exactly 10% as council requested. The lighter color of kind of tan is more than a 10% increase. And then if there's no highlighting on it, then I did not recommend an adjustment. So things I did not recommend adjustments on, were items that, oftentimes, you know, when you look at the median income in our county, we do have, a significant number of our citizens that experience rural poverty and challenges in daily life in terms of paying expenses. And so things like electrical permits, as one example, one of the most common reasons we see that is somebody, loses power for non-payment. Well, then they have to get a permit from us for an inspection before they're allowed to get power back. So, raising that even further for people that are already at a disadvantage, it seems like that's not in the advantage of serving our citizens. So you'll see, above-ground swimming pools, non-permanent accessory structures, those are like your portable sheds you pick up from, you know, Menards or something that are relatively cheap. And then your electrical, permits, those are your big areas where, and then, inspections we didn't adjust, you know, those are the big areas where we didn't make changes. Those are the most common permits we see from, your unincorporated burgs and your areas that are economically depressed in Clinton County, where people are just trying to improve their situation a little bit. And, I don't see how, to them, even $10 is a huge, huge amount. But otherwise, across the board, most permits have gone up, you know, $10 to $25, for the permit, which I live in the county, so I tried to think as I did this, you know, if I was gonna remodel my house, it would have been a $40 permit, now it's a $65 permit. Would I not do my remodel over $15? No, that's not a big deal, you know, so I tried to kind of look at it that way. So you can kind of see, if you have any questions for me, I don't see a point in like reading these one by one, we'll be here forever, unless there's something specific. don't think there was anything I really did anything crazy with. Mostly things that were over 10%, a lot of them I was rounding. There were a few where we were way out of line with the others that I reviewed. So in those cases, I did bring us up, not to the middle, but to the lower end of what the average is, because as we compete, our policies have always been, when we compete with the surrounding counties for development, we offer two things: a slightly, but not excessively lower permit fee, and a friendly, streamlined staff and hearing process to try to work with developers. So, not necessarily an easier process, because we believe that, in Clinton County, we still want quality, so that's not an area we're willing to compromise. So I didn't go and look and go, oh, Boone County's charging this, I'm gonna go $100 above Boone County. They are in a different environment than us. And being mindful of the fact that, many of the people pulling these permits are Clinton County residents that have been here long-term. So raising it enough to help with the budget is one thing, but trying to be the highest fees in the state, it just doesn't seem in fitting with who we are as a community, or how we serve our friends and neighbors that we live around, as most of us are also county residents that, live in the county, not in the city of Frankfurt, so.
So the increase of more than 10% was to get to the level closer to the average, but on the bottom side,
Correct,
All right.
correct.
Just wanted to understand that.
And I did, because each one is just a little bit different, like some were 11% and
Yeah.
some were like 20%, it's hard to give an exact, but I did kind of just do a general average where I added a bunch of them together on the old and the new, and then looked to see the percentage, and overall, it's a 25 to 30% increase across the fee schedule, industrial, renewables, hearing applications, and permits.
The one that jumps out to me, I guess, is the change of approved plan in renewables, and it went from 100 to 1,000. That's the one that kinda caught my eye.
Yeah, so
Is
this
that's, I understand why, I guess, but, that's a huge jump.
It is a big change, and part of the reason I did that is we were way lower, A, but B, when we set these fees, it was before we did the solar. We've had two sets of revisions, changes of approved plans on the development plan, they were both administrative, but the amount of time it took Pat and I to go through and review every one of 44 changes across 300 pages, honestly, the county paid us more than $100 by a fairly significant, if you looked at the amount of staff time. So it seemed like, just in terms of making sure we're covering expenses, and honestly, I'm not sure we want to go, man, this is so cheap, just file whatever and then change your plans 400 times,
Just keep changing your plan.
You
Yeah,
really want
it's-
the plan to be as close as possible at a public hearing for the public to see, and then for it to be minor changes from
Yep.
there on out.
And not a lot of those will happen.
No.
One direction
No,
or another.
and even
so.
with Invenergy, very few happened, and they were all changes to the benefit of, like they took panels that were 500 foot away from a house and they moved them to 750 foot away from a house, as an example. That they were changes to the shrinking side, there wasn't a single change that was made that got larger.
Do you remember approximately what year was the last time the fee schedule was changed? You
It was
referenced
around when I was hired, so I was hired in '07.
Okay, that's fine. I just,
I mean,
rough idea for
It
the
was
audience.
somewhere
And
between '07 and '10.
All right.
Now, there've
So-
been adjustments we've made here
Yeah.
and there along the way, like we added the renewable fees, we added a parking lot fee. Like, there's been a few things, there is one fee.
But generally
I
speaking.
did add one fee, that reminded me, that is new, that I probably should mention. It's under other permits, it's a floodplain permit. And this will probably be discussed more when we do the floodplain ordinance revision. But, the state's been putting a lot of pressure on us, so we're different than many communities, as floodplain administrators. Because we require permits for nearly every kind of development activity, we do our floodplain reviews in with our permit review. So if somebody's building a new house and it's near a floodplain, we do the floodplain review and we include it with the house permit. But, there are occasions where something is happening, fences are a perfect example. A fence being placed in a floodplain requires a floodplain review by DNR if it's in the floodway, by us if it's in the fringe. And, that's just one example of several issues where when DNR did the review with us this year, they really raked us over the coals and they said, you can't have activities that are non-permitted in the floodplain, there has to be a review for everything. And I really don't wanna charge fence permits, every farmer that puts up a livestock fence has to come in for, there's no reason for it overall. And same thing with 100 things over. You're digging a hole, there's a lot of things that require a flood permit review that don't require a building permit. So I added this so that we can satisfy the state requirement, and it will only apply to things that the floodplain ordinance requires review of that are in a floodplain, not to general activities throughout the entire county.
Okay.
So, and it then gives us a way to charge for that review and to issue a formal approval. So then when we have a violation, like you would probably be aware of, out here at East, there was a situation where somebody had like built a bridge across, and a whole bunch of other things. And we were very weak in our ability to help, surveyor's office deal with that, because we didn't have a floodplain permit. If we had a floodplain permit, he would have had to come through us for every single activity before he even got anywhere else. So that was one example that the state used as well, that they were like, this isn't right. So I did tuck that in there as a new permit, and it's already referred to within our ordinance, we just don't have it separate. So if something's not already being permitted, we don't have a way to charge it or formalize it.
Okay.
I think you did a great job, Liz, you and your staff reviewing all this, and our objective is not to be the highest, but to make sure we don't shortchange ourselves when we see, and we hear from developers all the time saying, you know, our fees are by far more reasonable than other places where they look at developing. So one request I would have, so we can keep track, is when you publish this that I'm about to make a motion to approve, put revised date on the copy so that we'll know next time real easily that the last time it was revised.
Yeah, I can just, make the title of the top fee schedule as adopted and put
There you go.
today's date, and then it's just part of the title.
With that in mind, I'd make a motion that we approve the current fee schedule and put it into place, say right here at the first of the year.
Second.
Was that Andy?
Grant. Roll call, please.
Jordan Brewer?
Yes.
Clark Beard?
Yes.
Walt Minnick?
Yes.
Andy Bailey?
Yes.
And Grant Muller?
Yep.
Or yes.
Either one.
Okay, and that's everything that I've got, unless there's something you guys are aware of I've forgotten.
I don't have anything. So our next meeting will be on February 7th, here at 6 PM. With that, I'll entertain a motion to
Motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
All right. Second.
Second.
There we go. Thank you.
Did you watch the Boilers?
I went to it. We have season tickets.
Oh, you see, okay.
Yeah. Yep, so I was,
Jordan, who adjourned and seconded?
Clark,
Andy.
I made the
and I
motion.
second it.
It was bad. Against good experience, athletic. Dad and I were watching it at home. It was just, I don't know.
I mean, Rutgers,
They're good. They're not bad. I mean,
Rutgers always gives them trouble because they have size at the guard positions.
yeah.
They play East Coast style basketball.
Yeah.
They're physical. They foul all game long. They don't call
Yep.
them, and they put pressure on. And so then when they're not shooting well, first half Purdue shot 29 from the field, 24
Yeah.
from three,
Yeah.
and Rutgers was 54 from the field.